Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. Today, Amber and I decided that we were going to talk a little bit about resentment. So, resentment for me is something that is always a clue that I'm getting a little crispy or burnt out. I mean, do I think I can be kind of resentful from time to time anyways? Sure. But when I feel like I am feeling a lot of resentment, when I am stomping around thinking about how nobody is working as hard as me, nobody cares as much as me, nobody is as busy as me, everyone is like shirking their obligations and I am having to pick up the slack, that is always a clue for me. Oh, Jill, you have descended into an ugly space. So for me, resentment is like a ding, ding, ding red flag, but I think resentment is something that a lot of us struggle with. When I think about like conversations that happen around the water cooler at work, so to speak, or like when you're getting dinner and stuff with your girlfriend, sometimes a lot of that time is spent talking shit, especially if you're in a negative space.
Right.
I'm like you, especially if I'm in a negative space. A lot of my time is spent talking shit. And it's usually around those things that I just said. Nobody's working hard enough. Nobody cares enough. Nobody's doing what they need to be doing. Da 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 da. I think that is probably a pretty common experience. I think a lot of us get there often, especially when we're tired, especially when we're burnt out. So I thought it would make sense today to unpack resentment a little bit. Why do we go to that space? How do we get out of that space? What is kind of the antidote for some cycling thoughts of resentment? So that's what we're thinking today. So Amber, what do you think? Tell us how to fix it. Tell me how to not be resentful.
Oh, I don't know how you're not going to be resentful.
Because I've been a little resentful lately.
Well, before we started, we did talk about how resentment also a lot of times plays out as you're taking the victim role, right? You're being resentful because you've taken the victim role of saying, nobody does this, I have to do everything, why me, why do all these things always happen to me, why do other people get things that I never get? So it goes into that place of just playing or portraying yourself as a victim to the circumstances that you're in.
Yes.
And the only way to move through that is to A, recognize that that's what you're doing, and B, decide that you're going to save yourself because nobody else is coming to do it.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, just because you're stomping around saying that nobody's working, that's not going to make anybody work harder.
Right. And also, it's an external focus, right? Now I'm externally focusing on what everyone else is doing instead of what I'm doing. And the only thing I can control is what I'm doing. And when I'm trying to control what everyone else is doing, all I'm doing is spinning my wheels, right? So I can choose to continue to do what I'm doing and feel okay about my level of commitment to whatever it is, to work, to family, to whatever. Or I can say, this isn't worth it because no one else is putting in the same amount of effort as me. So in a relationship type of a situation, or in a partnership, or in a team at work, like if you feel like you're putting forth all the effort and no one else is putting forth effort to match that, that might be a clue to say, A, I need to have a conversation and let people know how I'm feeling about this instead of stomping around and being the victim. B, I need to evaluate whether this is the place that I need to be, right? Maybe I need to remove myself from this situation so that I don't have to feel like this anymore.
Right, because this isn't a healthy place for me to be if the balance truly is so off. I was thinking when you were talking right before you said like the first thing you would need to do is have a healthy and normal conversation about it. I was thinking, my gosh, I wonder of all the times where I've thought, like my partner wasn't putting in the amount of effort and flexibility or something like that I was, or that I felt like my coworkers or colleagues were not working as hard as I was. How many times have I actually said something? Not even just said something to them. How many times, if I felt like on an interdisciplinary team, I was carrying the bulk of the work, I'm not even like going to make myself have the confrontation with them. Have I even ever told my boss, hey, it feels unfair that X, Y, and Z is happening? And I would say most of the time, no, I'm seeking out a peer, aka an echo chamber, right? Of someone who I know will validate and jump
Mm-hmm.
on my bandwagon, right? Instead of like telling my partner, like, hey, it feels frustrating, you know, I don't know, that you're not cleaning at the same rate that I am, right? Or that I'm always like doing things to hang out with your friends and family and you're not doing anything
Mm-hmm.
to hang out with my friends and family. No, I call my friend, right? You know, I talk to
Mm-hmm.
somebody and I bitch about it with them.
Yeah.
So I wonder too if there's a piece of resentment, especially when you're talking about that very first thing, that's avoiding healthy confrontation and communication.
Well, it's a resentment that you can't read my mind and you know what I'm thinking and that you're able to do what I think you should be doing.
Yes, it's a stealth expectation.
Yeah.
We've talked about that on here before too.
Mm-hmm.
And a stealth expectation is something I stole from Brené Brown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I didn't steal it, I'm crediting her here. But yeah, Brené Brown talks about stealth expectations, which is where you have expectations for people, programs, etc. around you that you've never named or said out loud. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You've never said to your partner, hey, I think it would be really great if we spent more time with my friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you're stomping around, can't believe he won't spend time with my friends when that's what I want to do.
And that kind of in a relationship situation, that kind of goes back to like what we talked about the rom-com. If I have to tell you to do it, then it's not like as good as if you just did it automatically out of nowhere, like it was just this magical thing that you made all my wishes come true, as if that's your job as a human, is to make all my wishes come true, right? But sometimes that's the story we tell ourselves as the reason why we don't have the conversation. This person should just know this. If I have to ask them to do it, then I don't want it.
Right. Yeah, like otherwise it's not magical or it's not whatever. And I think we do it at work too, right? I expect that this person does this part of the project, right? Even thinking back in school, right? Like when you had to do a group project. Yeah, you could be mad if everybody said, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And the person who said they were going to do X just straight up didn't do X, right, by the due date. But really what would make me mad, and I think would make some people mad in group projects, is you sit down in the group and everybody's like blinking at each other. And I'm like, well, God damn it. Nobody's volunteering to do anything, right? So I'm like, I'll do X, Y, and Z. And everybody's like, cool, bro, like shine on. And then the next day I'm like, why do I have to do X, Y, and Z?
Because you said
you
would.
Fucking said you would,
Instead
Jill.
of facilitating a conversation about how we were all going to do it, you were like, hey, I'll just do it because I'm frustrated. I think about times when I've had these stealth expectations of people, right? Especially in relationship, where I just thought, why aren't you doing the dishes at the time that I think you should be doing it? Why is the laundry not done? Why do I always have to do this? And outside of not setting the expectation, and stomping around when the stealth expectation wasn't met. Also, even if that person would have done it, I would have decided that they didn't do it correctly.
Yes.
So they couldn't have won because
game.
I created a stealth and an unreasonable expectation, which probably led the other person to be like, I'm just going to like stand back and let you tornado around here and hope that this stops eventually.
Right, and just kind of like avert my eyes because you're being fucking crazy right now.
Right.
Like, you know, like you're like a wild animal. I'm trying not to make eye contact and just like hope this tantrum ends soon. I think stealth expectations, they're so obvious in romantic relationships, right? And that's why every single book you read, podcast you listen to, everything is like clear communication, assertive communication, you know, share what your expectations are, share this, share that. But I think it happens a lot at work too. And I think we move into a space of stealth expectations and of resentment when we are feeling like a lot of overwhelm. I think when I'm in a space where I'm very overwhelmed, I see all this shit on my plate and I'm like, I can't handle it all, right? So I start expecting people without telling them to recognize that I have a bunch of shit on my plate and that I need some help. And then I think, like you said, I never communicate that. It doesn't happen. Even if it does happen, am I being unrealistic in the way that I want it to happen? Then it's self-perpetuating drama because then things aren't happening. I'm more mad. I'm more resentful. I'm spending more time talking shit about the people that didn't do the things that I wanted them to do than actually doing the things that I could do to get the stuff off my plate. Round and round and round we go.
I see, just like we talked about with the relationships where it's stealth expectation and then they're never going to be able to do it good enough, right? I see that in the workplace all the time where someone is like, why didn't you do this, right? And then the person scurries to go do it because they didn't know it was a thing that needed to be done. And they're like, okay, I'll do it. And then they do it. And they bring it back in record time, proud of themselves. Here it is, right? Here's this thing that you asked for. And the person just rips it to shreds.
Yes.
This isn't what I wanted at all. And why don't you know how to do this? And instead of working to build the skill, if you want something done a certain way, especially in the workplace, help the rest of your team learn if it truly isn't done correctly. I'm not talking about like it's just not done the way you want it. But if it's truly not done correctly, help people build the skills so that the next time you have to ask somebody, they can feel confident in doing it. Because if you do that a lot of times, people will do things that you ask, but they will always half-ass it because they know that when you come back around, you're going to rip it to shreds no matter how much time they spend on it.
No matter how much they do it. That's exactly right. Man, and that's a whole nother conversation about why critical feedback is so important, because if you say it's amazing every time, people are going to half-ass it, and if you say you hate it every time, people are going to half-ass it. But I think, yes, it has so much to do with your orientation. It's like, how are you showing up in this space? Because I think back, and I say this all the time. I say it sometimes more than I think it, but I do try to say to people, I say, I truly believe there are very few people in this world that show up to work and like want to fuck up what they're doing. Particularly in our field, right? Like no social worker wakes up and is like, man, I really want to let down my clients today. I really want to miss shit. I want to miss deadlines. I don't want to get my documentation in on time, right? I don't want to call people back.
No, and I've supervised a lot of folks. And I mean, some of them really were not great, right? I mean, like every once in a while you come across somebody who's not great, but I can tell you that even the not great performers, they didn't come to work thinking like,
that's not their orientation. Nobody's coming to work saying, man, I wonder how I can really let down Jill today, right? I wonder how I can really shirk some responsibilities today. And I think the same thing in partnerships. You know, never have I ever woken up and been like, man, I really hope I disappoint my partner today. I really hope I can con my way out of some chores today so he has to do them instead. You know what I mean? But it's so easy when you're on the other side of that to be like, it's like they're not even trying. It's like they want to be bad at their job, right? He's hiding from me and watching football, you know, and not doing X, Y, and Z, you know. And I just think, to me, resentment is always ding, ding, ding. Jill, you are in an ugly place. Because one, nobody's thinking about you at all. And certainly they're not thinking about how they can fuck up your day today.
Right.
Because when you move into that place of resentment, it's so self-focused. It's so through the lens of self, you know? Because it's like, I am mad at everyone for how their actions or what they have or what they're doing or where they are is affecting me, right?
Yeah, it's not meeting your needs. Why are all these people not meeting my needs?
Yes.
Because you're not meeting your needs. That's why.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking about some resentment that I've had, especially in relationships. 100% of the time, it came from me not being willing to take care of me and starting from that place and then wanting somebody to enhance it. Because when you start from that place and you can meet your own need, if nobody enhances it, you're not upset.
Right, you're okay.
You're like, okay, cool. I mean, I already met the need here. I was just hoping to meet the need with you or to do something with you. But if that doesn't happen, I don't have to be mad at you because I saved myself. I did what I needed to do, right? But when I get to a place where I'm not taking care of myself and I want somebody else to take care of me, that's when I start to become resentful. And there have been times in my life, and even times since I've done more healing work for myself, that there have been times where I've been a little empty. And I know that. And I know that what I'm asking somebody to do is to fill something that I can't do right now. But what I've gotten better at doing is saying that.
Yes.
This is really important to me right now because I'm at a really low place. Right?
Exactly.
Also knowing that it's not their responsibility. So if they say no, I'm going to have to be okay with that, even though it sucks. But if that's the level I'm coming to you with, I'm going to say that.
Yes. And we've said this before, or at least I've said it before in other forums, is I think we often chase in relationships, particularly romantic relationships, but I also think in friendships and family relationships, that which we will not give ourselves. Like a personal example for me, we all know love languages, right? I used to always say one of my love languages is words of affirmation. And it was. I really kind of needed that in a relationship. I looked for that in a relationship. That felt really good when I got that in a relationship. But I think looking back now, that was something that I was never giving myself. I was never giving myself validation. I was never telling myself, you are good enough. You are okay the way that you are. It is okay how you look. It is okay how you show up in this world. You know, I never would give myself that.
Right.
So I was constantly seeking that all the time. And it's interesting now that I do give myself that.
Right.
I mean, who among us does not love a word of affirmation? Yeah. Like, please tell me I look pretty today. Like, please tell me that was so smart, you know. But I would not consider that one of my top love languages anymore. Because I'm not constantly seeking that. And I wonder too, in that same kind of vein and conversation, if that's not really one of the roots of resentment, right? We are mad that someone has something that we are not giving ourselves. We are mad that someone is not giving us what we are not giving ourselves. You know? And it's like, that is kind of that root of it. Right. Like, it's like what you said earlier, it's so outwardly focused when really that should be a clue. Ding, ding, ding. It's time to turn inward.
Right.
I think it's important that we surround ourselves with healthy people, people that care about us, right? People that give back, people that are doing their own work. But I think so much of the pain and suffering we feel is just self-induced. And could be fixed by doing internal work. Yeah, I mean, if you are in a totally toxic workplace where expectations are high, and I've been in workplaces like this where there's like a group of people that don't have to fucking work, right? Like where they literally don't have to do shit. And it is what it is. There are no consequences, you know, and there's expectations. Well, and I've been in workplaces where I've put the expectation on myself that I need to work hard. It's not like anybody else put that expectation on me. But I have been in situations, I think, where like the expectation was like Jill will carry on doing what she's doing and these people will do nothing. And that's just the way it is. And that's not okay. And that's not healthy. And that can't be fixed by internal work. But that's where we get to the point that you talked about at the very beginning. If looking inside doesn't work, if clear communication doesn't work, then probably removing myself from the situation is what needs to happen.
Right.
Yeah. And getting out of there.
Yeah. I think it was a book about Buddhist teachings. And it said that you create your own misery. If you are having misery, you are creating your own misery by your thoughts. Because no matter what, no matter, you know, you have a physical ailment, you have a mental ailment, it's always about how you are choosing to perceive that and how you are choosing to move through it. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have any suffering in your life, right?
Right.
Because you will have some of that. But the misery part of it, the part of it where it's like, I am just going to hold on to this suffering as if this is my anchor to the world, right? That you choose for yourself. And anytime that I move into a space where I'm frustrated I'm like, Amber, why are you creating your own misery? What are you doing? And I just remind myself of that all the time. And now I say it to other people. People get frustrated. Are we going to choose to create our own misery today? Or are we going to choose to just go ahead and let this go and decide that this other person that you're angry about has their own journey in their own life and they get to make their own choices and you don't have to agree?
Well, and I think it's just all about, it's like about your orientation to it as well. There are going to be bad things. There are going to be hard things in this world. Like you said, we are all going to encounter suffering if we live long enough, right? But how are you thinking about it? And we had this example at work the other day. So we are in a space in our community where people are really struggling just with funding, right? And resources and staffing. That is a systemic problem that we can't blame on any one person, right? Or any one agency, no matter how convenient it would feel to have that kind of solution. And we were having an issue with a client that needed to take a shower. And this particular individual was meeting a lot of closed doors just because of their reputation, their behaviors, whatever. And I spent the first part of the day stomping around. This is fucking ridiculous. Why can't they go here? Why can't they go there? Why isn't this person stepping up? Why isn't this place stepping up? Da 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 da. And then we were sitting in a meeting, and my colleague, I make everybody in meetings go around and say a personal or professional win. Right? And it like makes them very irritated every other week, but I make them do it. You know, they're like, this is stupid. I'm like, well, I don't care. We're doing it anyways. We were sharing like a personal or professional win, and she said, I am just so grateful that we had the ability to build a shower room in a law office, right? Which is actually hysterical that we even have, but it goes to show the people that work there were all like former people who worked in the homeless system and things like that. But she's like, I am so grateful that we have a shower room here, that this person can come and take a shower. Same issue, right? Same suffering, same fucked up situation. And her orientation towards it, so positive, right?
Right.
For her to be like, I am so grateful that I had the space and ability and leadership and money that allowed me to create this, right?
Right.
And I was looking at the same exact situation and being like, the world is broken, the system is fucked, like we will never recover, you know. And do I think we could do some things to make the world less broken and the system less fucked? Sure. It's exactly to your point. We had the same exact experience. And her orientation came from a place of gratitude and here's how I can fit into this world in like a perfect and amazing way. And mine was like glass is half empty, glass is half empty, glass is half empty.
Yeah. And the world is always going to present us with challenges. The community is always going to present us with challenges. People are always going to present us with challenges. But you get to choose whether or not you are going to grab onto that challenge that was not yours, that you did not create, that is not yours to bear, and hold on to it and be like, I would love to have this misery here with me.
Yes.
Or saying, that is messed up. I would like it to be different. I'm going to try to figure out a way to work around, to get somebody what they need. But I am not going to hold on to what the outcome of this is to create my own misery. Right? Like, there's no reason for me to be miserable about this. I didn't create it. It's not mine. I still can help.
Right. Do I have the unique skills and ability to jump in here and make something easier for someone or myself or this or that? And if the answer is yes, then do it, right? And if not, then surrender. Let it go.
Right.
Like you said, it's not your mess. I did not make that mess. I think we hold on to resentment when we're unwilling to surrender. You know, you always talk about, Amber, and I picture it in my brain a lot, of we are all floating down rivers, right? In our little kayaks or rafts or inner tubes or whatever we want to float on. And we have times where we are thrashing and sticking our oar back in and going against the current, grabbing onto a tree root on the bank. And it's
telling
like,
other people their boats are dumb.
Right, spending a lot of time focused on other people's boats, right, and in their journey down the river. And resentment is probably an indicator that we are not surrendering, right? We are not going with the flow.
Right.
We are not going with the current. We are thrashing in the water as opposed to going with it. Because I do think that when I do get to myself, every single day I have to reorient myself to a space of surrender. Welcome to having like the worst fucking control issues on the planet. If I'm not in that vein, then that's where I think I experience more resentment. Because the river's not running the way I think the river should. You know, as opposed to being like, this is the river. And this is how she's going.
Yeah, I had a conversation this morning about control with some women. And we were talking about, you know, needing to trust and not feeling like we need to control everything around us. And like, how do we come back to ourselves and not, you know, work to control everything externally? How do we, you know, work internally? And as we were talking about it, we started talking about children and the fact that that relationship is different when you have children. You feel a sense of responsibility as you should for your children, but sometimes you feel this sense of responsibility to make everything perfect for them. And not perfect from a sense of like taking care of yourself and showing up as the best parent that you can, but perfection around every step that they are going to take through their childhood to ensure that they are productive and happy adults as you see their journey to be.
Yes.
And when we get in that place, it's this control over, you're constantly trying to control this child. That leads to resentment. That leads to you resenting what they're doing, them resenting what you're doing.
You resenting that other people aren't following your perfect parenting plan for that child.
Right. And then also it leads to a place, because we were talking about how sometimes you have wisdom that you want to give another person, whether that's your child or someone else, right? You see them heading down a path and you're like, ooh, I see where that is going.
I've been down that
and
path.
That's not great. But to go to somebody and say, stop it, I know that that's going to be wrong, do this instead. That's trying to control what they're going to do. But instead going to someone and saying something along the lines of, hey, I just can give you a little advice here because I've kind of done this before and this is how, it's just something to consider. Right? As you move down, and then being okay with whatever choice that they make.
Right.
But I think when we look at children in that sense, in that level of control, when we tell them, don't do this because this is what's going to happen. And I remember this as a child for myself. It was like, don't do this. And I was like, well, I'm doing that anyway.
Right.
I already know that that's not the path I want to go on. So I'm going to do this. But now not only am I doing what I believe is right for me, I feel shame and guilt about doing it because you told me that I shouldn't. Whereas had you come to me and said, why don't you consider this and then make your choice, I could have made a choice and not felt the shame and guilt that comes along with making a good choice, what I thought for myself, right? And then that carries on into adulthood. Every time you make a choice that other people don't agree with, it's like you just carry this shame and guilt instead of realizing that that was a suggestion and not a demand.
Right. When someone is in that controlling space, there are no winners. Because one, you can't fucking control the actions of other people.
No.
So you're not going to win because you're not going to get what you want. You're not going to get the outcomes and behaviors or whatever you're trying to manage and control. It's not going to happen. It never will. And you're going to make yourself crazy, resentful, angry, bitter, insert adjective here. And you are also raining terror down upon the people that you are trying to control. You are making them feel shame and guilt and those types of things. You are eroding trust in your relationship with that person.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think back to any sort of relationship I've ever had where I tried to control it. It never ends well.
Right.
It never, ever ends well. One, because I'm not successful in my endeavors, right? And two, and in trying to do that, I'm making myself miserable. I'm making somebody else miserable. And often you lose that relationship.
Yeah. And I just think of all the resentment that comes on both sides of that fence. The resentment that you are not following my direction, and then resentment on the other side of being asked to do something that doesn't feel like it's in alignment with what you want to do.
Yes.
Right? And being judged for that. And I think that, that goes for all relationships, but I think for parents specifically, it's very hard because you get into a space where you're like, these are my little humans that I need
that I literally made, that I created.
But then also remembering these little humans have their own journey. They have their own life. I have to be okay with the choices that they make. All I can do is make suggestions and heal myself and be a model or something like that, which, a lot of times you don't realize until you're my age and your kids are adults. Like, you spend their whole life trying to control them, right? And then you get to that point and you're like, oh, shit, sorry.
Oopsies.
Oops. I didn't know what I didn't know back then, right? But sometimes that comes from, the way we were brought up, how our parenting came to us and what we thought needed to happen in order to keep our kids safe. I don't think it comes from a malicious place. Even when we're in relationship with other people, I don't think it comes from a malicious place, especially when what you're doing, you're trying to, in your mind, keep the other person safe or help them up level or help them be a better person in your mind. You're like, if I get you to do all these things, you'll do better. But you finally have to get to the point where you're like, you'll be the best version of yourself if you do it, not if I sit here and force it.
Exactly. And my time is better spent healing myself.
Right.
And questioning why I feel the need to control, why I am so damn interested in what you're doing of every
Right.
second of every day.
Right.
I mean, what do they always say in the recovery world? Hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
And I think, yeah, our time is better spent thinking, how could we help ourselves hurt a little less?
Right.
You know, to just try to ease the suffering overall
Yeah.
in this world.
Yeah. Now I think more about how do I do my own healing work and shine a little brighter for myself, not for other people, but shine brighter for myself, and how much further that's gotten me in relationship with other people than what I was doing before. Because I think now, because I'm shining brighter for myself, there are more people that, I hate the word influence, because it, like, when I hear influence, I think manipulate.
Feels a little coercive.
Right, but I think that it does influence people to be
Yes.
like, whoa, how did you do that?
How are
Right.
you there and how are you showing up? You know, you go into like a big meeting with a lot of people,
Mhm.
right? And there's always like the loudest people in the room, right?
Right.
There's always the people that are talking the most. And there's always the people that are like, absolutely check the fuck out, right?
Mhm.
They're like, I could not care. It would
Right.
be impossible for me to care less about
Mhm.
what is happening in this space.
Right.
But then you have the people that maybe aren't saying as much, but they're participating. But it's
Mhm.
just like you said, it's obvious that they know exactly what the fuck is going on. They speak when it's important. They're in alignment, right?
Right.
They're in alignment in the meeting. And I think you can almost liken that to how we show up in this whole world. Typically, the people I'm looking for guidance from are not the loudest people
Right.
in the room. They're also not the people that don't give a fuck about themselves or anyone
Mhm.
else around them. They're the people that obviously do care, that are obviously checked in, they're paying
Mhm.
attention. And it's just, yeah, their energy is bright and
Right.
trustworthy in a way
Yeah.
that other people's are not.
Yeah. And I remember trying to be the loudest person in every
Oh my
room that I was in.
God,
You know,
yes.
and not just at work, but like everywhere. I was the loudest person.
Mm-hmm.
I was not wise by any means.
But people had to fucking listen.
But they had to. You
'Cause
know,
I
I
wouldn't
was
shut up.
You know,
Yes.
I was a little charming, but not wise for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah, I mean I could put on a good show.
Right.
Yeah, but what a better space to be is in that
Mhm.
space of wisdom and of certainty, and that comes from being grounded.
Yes.
Right? That comes from looking internally and doing your own
Right.
work and recognizing, you know, when you fuck up, recognizing what your strengths are, recognizing when you should speak, recognizing that most people show up doing their best every
Mhm.
goddamn day. It's a focus that is more outward and not so like self. How does all of this impact me? What about me? How are
Right.
people perceiving me,
Right.
me? It's like almost this more transcendent kind of like worldview.
Yeah. When I speak and I know I'm in alignment and I know that I'm grounded in what I'm saying, I believe it to my core,
Yes.
I don't worry about how other people perceive that.
Correct.
I'm like, this just needs to be shared and everyone can take it or leave it. That's okay. I know that what I'm saying isn't demeaning. It doesn't have any ill intent,
Right.
but it is my truth
Mm-hmm.
from my core, and I'm going to say it, you know. And I remember times where I would say things that were not my truth from my core, and I was so worried about the holes that were going to be poked in it
Or
and
how it would be
Right.
perceived.
yeah.
Yes.
And it just feels better to be able to speak from that place where you know this is truly what I think, and it doesn't really matter how anybody else takes it.
Well, yeah,
at this
you're
point.
taking away, kind of to almost come full circle, you're taking away your expectations of how others will, you know what I mean, will
Right.
do it, which is where that whole resentment piece comes from the
Mhm.
beginning, is because you have so many fucking expectations
Right.
about how people are going to engage with you, how they are going to engage in the world, what they are going to do, how they are going to do it. Yeah, when you're truly coming from that place of alignment, you feel so good about what you're doing and
Mhm.
saying that there's not even thought given
Right.
to the rest of that.
Right. And I want to caveat, this is not the same thing as when people say, I give zero fucks with what anybody thinks
Oh.
about, and I'm just going to say whatever I want. Because that is very different. When I'm going to say whatever I want, and it is not going to come from a place of compassion. I don't care about anybody else's feelings, not how they perceive what I'm saying, but their actual feelings. Like, I'm going to say some things that might be mean, that might be unkind, that might be degrading. That is not what I'm talking about.
No, that's you working your shit out on other people, not you speaking your truth.
Right.
That's you taking all the ugliness that you won't fucking work through and just spewing it out of your mouth.
But I know, I mean, I've been in relationship with people that are like, well, that's the truth.
Well, that's just how I feel.
That's just how I feel, or that's just the truth, and I should be able to say what's true. That's not really true.
Yes.
You know, when you are saying something about another person, who are you to speak their truth?
Yes. I mean, look at the language that you're using. We talk a lot about I statements versus you statements, all that kind of stuff in social work. When you're speaking your truth the way you were talking about, it's coming from a place of compassion. There's probably a lot more I statements. Here is some wisdom. Here is some stuff that I have that I'm just putting out here for consideration. Right, where like, if I'm in a space where I give no fucks and I just have a lot of ugliness and sadness and anger and resentment and all of this boiling up inside of me and I can't contain it anymore, so I'm literally going to vomit it out into the world, I imagine that there's not a lot of I statements there. Or not a lot of that.
Or I'm just going to share information that I know is going to be hurtful to other people or is going to be upsetting. I've seen people be like, I am speaking my truth, and then turn around and say the most awful things to people.
So
and I'm like, if that is your truth, then just shut up.
No, it's not. Yeah, but it's not your truth. It's not, because when people speak their truth, it never comes out that way. That to me like speaks to some poor emotional and self-regulation, not alignment, in sharing what's inside.
You're not sharing something for the greater good at that point. You're sharing something for some weird personal gain.
Well, like I think to relieve your own emotional discomfort.
Right.
Resentment, like everything else, an inside job.
Yeah, always.
If we could sum up the Guided by Third Wheel podcast in one word or one sentence.
Maybe that's what it should be called. Guided by Third Wheel, an inside job.
An inside job. Do your own fucking work. Guided by Third Wheel. Yes. Do you want to pull a card for us?
Yeah, these are called Intuitive Whispers Oracle. All right, let's take a deep breath together. And we'll set the intention that we will get exactly what we need from this card reading and from this podcast today. And that maybe we will take a closer look at resentment in our lives and how sometimes that comes from trying to control things, and how we can potentially look to release some of our own misery by releasing some of that control.
Yes, surrendering. Oh, that was quick.
This one is called Your Mind, Your Body, and Your Soul. So this says, who are you? The question is at the center of spiritual inquiry. You may not know exactly who you are, and that's okay. In fact, it's good to be curious. This card is drawing you back to yourself to remind you that you have been created in this mind, body, and soul for a reason. Remember that you are exactly where and who you are supposed to be. Your work is to align all parts of yourself so that this divinely created being, which is you, is living your life to your fullest potential. Be gentle and kind to yourself. Open the connection between your mind, body, and soul so that you begin to feel whole again. Aww. So I think that does speak to what we've been talking about creating your own misery and making sure that you are in alignment with your truth. And that alignment is between your mind, body, and soul. So that alignment is between your thoughts and your words and your actions.
An inside job.
Yep.
So to speak.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.